there wasn't a big risk in trading for these guys in that you knew that you were getting a quality player. And with Trey Hendrickson, you're getting a guy who had 17 and a half sacks the last two seasons. I don't think that there's really much of a question with this guy. The question would be, Trey Hendricks is an older, expensive player, so it would run counter to everything that you kind of mapped out back in January and February.
On the River Islands guest line and with The Athletic covering the team, hey, Matt, how you doing? Have you ever seen a start, all your years doing this, ever seen a start that's had sort of like this much start-stop adversity, but also nothing but wins?
No. I mean, you're being pulled in two directions if you're a 49ers fan and maybe a 49ers executive, because I think that's sort of the question that they have to answer now. How aggressively do they try to replace Nick Bosa on this team? You would think, oh, geez, as you just spelled out very well, I mean, this is the team that's already starting its backup quarterback, that's missing its all-pro tight end, that's missing its best wide receiver, that was throwing to Kendrick Bourne and Jake Tondres and Sky Moore on the final drive. You would think, okay, let's not do anything drastic. This season might not be worth mortgaging the future, but they're 3-0. And when you're 3-0, you have a responsibility to the guys who are there, Christian McCaffrey, Trent Williams, your fan base, everybody. So it'll be interesting. My sense is that the 49ers will table this. Usually these things happen right at the trade deadline, even though it could happen today. And they'll wait and see where they are in late October and where, just as importantly, some other teams are as well, and how willing they would be to part with an edge rusher at that point.
And I was thinking about 2022 when they acquired Christian McCaffrey, and it was after the Atlanta game where they just could not run the ball, and they were 3-3. So is there a similarity here where, you get further into the season and you realize that you might just have one upgrade be necessary for you to go on some sort of a special journey?
Yeah, and I think that there's a comparison to be made between Christian McCaffrey and the guy that everybody's talking about, Trey Hendrickson.
Yep.
Tim Kawakami on our podcast spoke about this yesterday, so I have to note that I'm basically ripping him off when I say this.
Nice.
But yeah, shamelessly.
Yeah, we do that all the time, Matt. So go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, with McCaffrey, with Emmanuel Sanders, with Trent Williams, there wasn't a big risk in trading for these guys in that you knew that you were getting a quality player. And with Trey Hendrickson, you're getting a guy who had 17 and a half sacks the last two seasons. So, I mean, there's always the injury risk with everything. But as far as, bringing somebody into the locker room, whether he can handle the role of being your primary edge rusher, I don't think that there's really much of a question with this guy. The question would be, in order to trade for him, do you need to extend him? And, are you willing to kind of change your philosophy, which obviously you spent a long time making this decision in the off season that you're going to have a dramatic pivot towards younger players and fewer guys who are in their 30s. And Trey Hendricks is an older, expensive player who is going to turn 31 in December. So it would run counter to everything that you kind of mapped out back in January and February. So, I mean, but that happens. I mean, things change. The situations change. I'm sure the 49ers hope that they'd be 3-0 at this point. But I think that they would have absolutely taken 2-1 and maybe even 1-2 with the idea, okay, we're going to be better in the second half of the season than we are in the first half when we're relying on young players, when we don't have Brandon Ayuk in the lineup, when we don't have DeMarcus Robinson in the lineup. So I don't know. Things change. I don't know what the conversations are in the 49ers offices, but I imagine they're kind of discussing the same big picture questions that we are on the radio.
You know their tendencies, and so look, they've been aggressive at the deadline before, but I get what you're saying. It's 3-0, but it's more kind of like 3-0. So, like, if you were to kind of handicap what you think they're thinking right now, would they be of the mindset, if wins continue, even if they're wobbly wins, that they would try to bolster the team?
Well, I mean, if they're wobbly wins, it would be like what Dan said back in 2022, where you think, okay, if we can just add this guy, these wobbly wins will become more sturdy wins. So, yes, and I think that's been the sentiment from jump, that we might be wobbly in September and October, but there's a good chance that we gain our balance in November and December, especially on offense and on defense, because you're relying on so many young players. Presumably, they're going to be better, more tested come later in the year. And on offense, you would have Brandon Ayuk and some other weapons that you don't have early on. So, yeah, I think so. I mean, and that's sort of my point about, I imagine that they'll take a wait-and-see approach to this. Today, they brought in William Bradley King, who you might remember if you're one of the sickos that watch preseason football. He was with the 49ers for a little bit in August. They're going to add him to the practice squad tomorrow, probably. So, I mean, that's the caliber of move that they seem to be making at the moment. But I do think that probably the big move, if there is a big move, it would be just like, McCaffrey and Emmanuel Sanders. It comes in late October.
And the small move, which involves a big man, is Mykel Williams now sliding to the outside for more snaps. Do you envision that being the plan going forward with, some Sam O thrown in there as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think that could be what's behind the Bradley King maneuver. That would give them 3 defensive ends on the practice squad, one of whom is Robert Beal, the other one is Travis Gibson. I think they'll do something where they have those guys compete. One of them gets bumped up, and that guy plays a lot of special teams, which has been what Sam Okuano's been doing against the Jaguars, and that would free up Sam O to, be able to play more snaps on defense. But yeah, I mean, Mykel Williams, that's another argument for bringing in a Trey Hendrickson or a Bradley Chubb or somebody else that can play, be an edge rusher, because it would allow you to stick with your plan for Mykel Williams, stick with your plan for Yetur Gross-Matos, which obviously over the first 2 games was to give him the majority of the snaps at defensive tackle, and he's done well with those. Hasn't been a lot of snaps, but he's been effective when he's played. When Bosa left on Sunday, he turned into a defensive end again. He only had 1 snap out of, I think, 22 that came at defensive tackle. So, bringing somebody else in would allow you to kind of stick with what you thought was best before the season began. There are ways to Band-Aid it for now, but it will be interesting to see what their record is, say, October 15.
Matt, I know you're technically just guessing on this one, but based on what you know about where they were last week, is Brock Purdy playing this week, you think?
I'm just guessing on this one. I hope that this goes into the big
aggregation chamber.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yeah. I would think so. I mean, he seemed to be doing a little bit more each day last week. Wednesday he did look tentative. Thursday less so, and Friday less so. So, I mean, if it keeps going in that direction, I do think that he plays on Sunday. Good question is, who's more healthy right now, him or Mac Jones? Right. Because he wasn't moving around very well either by the end of that Cardinals game. So, I mean, if it's a tie between those guys, I mean, I suppose that you don't want to put somebody out there who could aggravate it. If it's a toe injury that could become chronic, you wouldn't want to do that. But I would think that Purdy is probably going to be the guy, just because he's got another week to heal.